Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you ILNP's two new collections, the Cabana Collection and the Stars and Stripes Collection. The Cabana Collection, I believe, is ILNP's first proper summer release. Normally they release two full 6-piece collections per season. This collection features shimmers and holographics, and then the Stars and Stripes Collection is a 3-piece set from their studio color line, which is different from their boutique effects where they are either creams or jellies. So as always, I will have timestamps in the description box for everything, and I will save more of my thoughts after some comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. So starting with the Cabana Collection, the first polish we have is Bare, and this one is described as a sandy beige crowley sprinkled with a delicate holographic sparkle. I feel like the name is so perfect for this shade because, as you can see, doing one coat just gives you this barely there wash of color. I don't think I would personally wear this in just one coat, but I feel like it is a nice neutral, especially if you're going for a your nails but better kind of look. Then this shade would be so perfect for that. So on the second coat, it does build up a little bit nicer. You start to see more of that beige crowley color, but it's obviously still really sheer, and I actually didn't love the application. I didn't find it to be super even coverage. It might be kind of hard to tell, but I just could notice some darker spots or patchiness, which I think would definitely be remedied if ILNP just switched over to a rounded paddle brush in all of their polishes, but it looks better on 3 coats. The next shade we have is Sunburst, and this one is described as a sunshine yellow packed with intense yellow shimmer. It's such a bright, almost lemon kind of yellow shade, which I think is so fun for summer. And as you can see, this one is really sheer on the first coat where it has this barely yellow tinted base, but it is just packed with those large shimmer particles. They're honestly so big that I would just kind of call these microflakes, because normally when I think of shimmers, I just think of a totally different kind of finish than this polish. This almost gives me a metallic kind of look, which I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of. But again, that's just personal preference. This does build up super beautifully in 2 coats. I think there were a few bald spots, so I did end up going in with a third, but it didn't cover up my nail line completely. Next up we have Pink Lemonade, and this one is described as a soft pink jelly with an intense gold shimmer and holographic flakes. So no surprise, this was my favorite from the collection. You know I'm such a fan of any kind of pink base with a gold shimmer. This one was just so pretty. I think the gold flakes in this are actually more of an iridescent kind of finish as opposed to a straight up metallic, which is why they sort of have a purple leaning color on like the edges of my nail. And full disclosure, when I did swatch this collection, it was pretty dark in the room except for my desk where I have my 2 lights. So I wonder if the edges of my nail are just kind of picking up the shadows of the room around me, so it might look a little darker here, where again it's kind of leaning into like a purple sort of color, but this really does have like a pinky sort of base, which you'll see better in the skittle portion because I'm showing it in natural sunlight. But this is a beautiful shade either way, and I built this up in 3 coats. Next up we have Brightside, which is a fiery orange filled with dazzling orange shimmer and holographic flakes. But they're not your typical holographic flakes. These are definitely very tiny and very finely milled, so you're not going to see those larger irregular kind of shards like in other ILNP polishes. But either way, this polish definitely was super gorgeous in terms of its formula. As you saw on the first coat, this had really great coverage and it was very even looking. It was also super pigmented too, so I feel like if you wanted, you could wear this in 1 coat for an almost jelly kind of look, or you can build it up in 2 coats for fuller coverage. It's not 100% opaque, but nearly there. Now getting into the blues, the first one is called Cannonball, and this is a vivid cerulean accented with holographic sparkle and blue metallic flakes. So I have to apologize from the beginning because this one is not picking up color accurate. Even though it's described as cerulean and not teal, I feel like there's a certain kind of green color in here that just is not picking up on my camera. I don't know how many of you guys deal with this on your iPhones, but I feel like my phone just always picks up the these sort of tealy green leaning blues as straight up blues, and it's so frustrating, so I'm really sorry. But color aside, this one had a really beautiful formula where it is just super pigmented, absolutely packed with all that shimmer and sparkle. And I got this one fully opaque in just 2 coats, probably because it was a little bit on the dark side. And rounding out the Cabana collection, we have Deep Dive, and this is a lively cobalt blue holographic infused with blue shimmer. So even though this one doesn't have the blue metallic flakes like the last polish does, I feel like visually they just look the same. But obviously the main difference is the color, where this one is a lot darker, more of that true cobalt blue, which I think is picking up pretty color accurate here. This one had another super fantastic formula that was just very full coverage on that first coat alone, but not quite a 1-coater. Maybe if your nails are shorter and you happen to do a slightly thicker coat, you might be able to get away with it, but I think just doing 2 coats is all you need. While this one is super gorgeous, I'm still a little torn on how dark it is. And finally, here is the skittle of the Cabana collection. I'm wearing them all in 2 coats each over Holo Taco's pink smoothing base coat, by the way. I forgot that I had it on, but I kind of wanted to see if doing 2 coats over that would make it more fully opaque, but you can still see some nail line. And of course, I have both of the blues on my thumb, which I think you can definitely tell a difference, but I still don't know how I feel about having 2 deeper sort of blues in the collection. So you'll have to let me know how you feel about that. But yeah, hopefully you can see just how pink lemonade actually looks. It's not really as purple, but again, when you are in more lower lighting, those large shimmer particles really pick up a lot of the reflections around you, which is why I feel like it kind of has a metallic finish. And now for the Stars and Stripes trio, the first color we have is Cherry, and this is described as a juicy cherry red. So while the email does say that each shade offers a rich and creamy finish, I personally found that 2 of the shades are a little bit more on the jelly crelly leaning side, and there is only 1 true cream. If you can't tell by the application or finish of this one, this is one of the crellies. It is definitely super pigmented, very even coverage with a lovely formula. It just has a little bit of squishiness, so even after 2 coats, you still are gonna see some nail line, which I don't mind usually. Like, I love jelly polishes, and especially in the summer, but I feel like this one just didn't know if it wanted to be a jelly or a cream, so it's just perfectly in the middle. Next we have Canvas, and this one is described as an opaque white. So this is a cream polish, and I was really impressed with this one. I feel like a lot of white polishes nowadays have pretty much the same kind of formula where they have come a long way compared to years ago, but usually when a white is on the opaque side, it is really thick and chalky and not the easiest to work with, but I didn't have that issue at all with this shade. It was just super smooth to apply and just crazy pigmented on the first coat alone, but still not exactly a 1-coater. Maybe if you're careful with your application or if your nails are shorter, you could get away with it, but it still is a fantastic white cream. And lastly, we have Tribute, and this is described as a classic deep blue. While this one definitely is very, very pigmented, I didn't exactly find it as creamy as Canvas was, where it's like that opaque cream formula. I feel like this did lean a little bit on the crelly side, but not nearly as much as Cherry was. So this is kind of an in-between, which I don't love. I wish the formulas were a little bit more consistent, but again, this had fantastic coverage and pigmentation where it was almost fully opaque on 1 coat, but I still would recommend doing 2. And here is a little skittle of the Stars and Stripes collection. I'm wearing 2 coats of each shade and layered over a clear base coat. And while my nails are shorter on this hand, I do still have some free edge, but you can't really tell that much. I think it's completely covered with the white and the blue, but you still see it a little bit with the red shade, mainly on my thumb, where again, it has a little bit of a squishy feel. So moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Bare, and I immediately knew I had to show this next to Toasted from the Winter Resort collection. It's another light beige neutral shade with a holographic sparkle, but it's a little bit more of a larger kind of flaky as opposed to this dainty scattering. But even aside from that, the base colors are a little bit different, where Toasted is just a little bit deeper and warmer. Because the sparkle in Bear is so dainty, I thought it might be kind of similar to Sandbar from last year's Under the Sea collection, which isn't magnetic, but it kind of still has that delicate sort of shimmery sparkle, but it's not quite the same, and the base is also a little bit different in terms of their color, and Sandbar is a lot more sheer too. Next for Sunburst, I wanted to show this next to Holo Taco's Sunshine Crush from the Rock Candy collection. That one is the super warm kind of marigold color, but next to Sunburst it looks pretty orange, so definitely not dupes color-wise or even finish-wise. They're just nothing alike. So even though I knew the finish was going to be really different, I still wanted to show this next to Mooncat's Demeter's Harvest from last year's Goddess Complex collection, otherwise known as the Corn Polish. I just felt like it was the closest yellow that I had to Sunburst, where it was this really bright, almost lemony yellow, but still very like shimmery or metallic-y. But again, once you see them on the nail, they definitely have a really different finish, where Mooncat's is more of that buildable, crelly kind of formula, and Sunburst looks a little bit more metallic-y. Next for Pink Lemonade, I of course had to show this next to Pink Flamingo, which is another pink jelly base with this yellowy golden iridescent shimmer. So while they might sound like they are the same polish, they definitely don't look the same. Pink Flamingo is just more of that warmer, almost corally pink, and the shimmer even shifts to green. Since Pink Lemonade has a little bit more of like a peachy sort of color to it, I thought it might be kind of similar to Cirque's Fandango. That one has a bright peachy jelly base with a yellowy golden shimmer and a dainty hollow sparkle, but on the nail they look super different. The shimmer in ILNP is just much larger, but again it kind of has this like purple sort of color to it, but still is pink, so I thought maybe I could show it next to Ethereal's Calcifer, which is more or less a dupe for Mooncat's Flight of the Monarchs if you're curious, but I thought this one had a little bit more of a warmer, almost pinky kind of base, and again with that golden yellowy orange shimmer, but again on the nail they are just super different, so they are not dupes. Then for Brightside, I knew I wanted to show it next to Carved, which was the orange that came out in last year's Halloween collection, but that one is a deeper, almost reddy kind of orange, and it also has these golden flakes. So I think a closer color comparison is Euphoria from the Splashed collection a few summers ago. That one is one of their iconic jelly hollow flaky polishes, and while it is a slightly different finish, I feel like it kind of looks the same on the nail. I mean, it is a little bit lighter, but the main difference is the shimmer, where it's just a lot stronger in Brightside, but there is apparently a shimmer in Euphoria. Then for Cannonball, I quickly again wanted to show a quick side-by-side next to Deep Dive, just so you can see that there is a difference, even though again Cannonball is not picking up color accurate. There's like a little bit more teal to it, but I feel like these are still a little too similar to be in the same collection. But for some other comparisons, I thought I could show this next to 0 Degrees, which was from the Winter Wonderland collection a few winters ago. That one is a little bit more steely, so it didn't have the right sort of tone or temperature, I guess. But then I remembered Invite Only, which was from the New Year's Eve collection a few years ago, and this one was surprisingly similar in terms of having that same kind of teal color. Invite Only is just a little bit darker and a slightly different finish as well, but I feel like these are the closest color-wise. The teal, by the way, is showing up in their shimmer particles, not the actual base color. I think you can see it a little bit more in Invite Only. I did also want to quickly show this next to Holo Taco's Teal No Lies from the Shimmering Secrets collection, which is a true teal. I know it's kind of confusing because I've been calling the shimmer in Cannonball like a teal shade, but it's not as green as a true teal like Holo Taco's Teal No Lies, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to show this as a reference. Then for Deep Dive, I knew I had to show this next to Songbird from the Wildflowers collection in the spring. This is another cobalt blue jelly that has a slightly different finish, and I also had to show this next to Sea Glass from last year's Under the Sea collection. That one again is another striking cobalt kind of blue, but with a little bit of a different finish as well. But it is a little bit more similar than Songbird because that one is more of like a jelly flaky finish. So on the nails, these definitely look really similar to each other, but surprisingly, Deep Dive is still a little bit different color-wise, where it's not much of a true blue, which I know sounds crazy because it looks like it could be a dupe for Sea Glass, but I promise you it's not. Then for the Stars and Stripes trio, starting with Cherry, I had to show this next to OPI's Big Apple Red because that's just a classic red polish, but it's a little lighter and maybe more pink leaning. I think the closest red cream I have in my collection to Cherry is OPI's A Bloom with a View, which is one of their Nature Strong polishes, but that one is a smidge darker and maybe a little bit more blue toned as well. So it's not an exact dupe, but again, just the closest when it comes to red creams in my collection. But since Cherry had that squishy, crully kind of finish, I wanted to show this next to Cirque's Lucky Jelly, which is their true medium red kind of jelly polish. Cirque's jellies are a lot more sheer, so it doesn't compare unless you build it up in 3 coats as seen here versus 2 coats of Cherry, because again, that one was super pigmented and these ended up looking really similar. Then for Canvas, I wanted to show this next to Olive Ave Snowy, which I said was my favorite white cream because it just has such a lovely formula. But admittedly, Snowy is a little bit more on the thinner side. So I'm wearing 1 coat of each here so you can hopefully see some slightly darker spots or streaks on Snowy's side, while Canvas was more pigmented and creamy and opaque. So I do think Canvas has the better formula, so I would say that is my new favorite. Snowy does build up to be fully opaque in 2 coats, but I did notice that next to Canvas, it looks a little off-white. And lastly for Tribute, I really struggled finding a good match for this one because I either had too many dark navy blues or they just were a little too light, like OPI's Ring in the Blue Year, which is just not comparable. But oddly enough, I feel like Olive Ave Roo was the closest in terms of hue. Like, it's obviously several shades lighter, but if it was darker, I feel like it would perfectly match the kind of tone or undertone that Tribute has, where it's almost like a peacock blue. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for ILNP's Cabana and their Stars and Stripes collection. As always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on these 2 releases, because I feel like I'm gonna be in the minority saying this, but I actually didn't love the Cabana collection. And I feel like that's so crazy because obviously I love ILNP and I usually love all of their collections and color palettes and everything. And that's not to say I don't like this color palette, because I do. It's definitely a little different than what I would normally go for in the summer, but I love that they went with like yellow, orange, blue kind of combination. But I don't love that they gave us these 2 like deeper blues, especially after having such a bold dark blue in the spring with Songbird. I wish at least one of these, probably Cannonball, was even lighter and more of like a true brighter cerulean. I personally feel like they're just a little too dark for me, but also not even just like personal preference, but even comparing to what was on their mood board, I feel like color-wise they didn't exactly match, which I really do love their mood boards, by the way, and especially for this collection, but I feel like this lineup just didn't really do it for me. And so I wonder if part of it is maybe the finishes as well, where even though I do love shimmers and I love ILNP's shimmers, I feel like in a way these were a little bit more flat, where they're not as like shifty and dimensional as like some of their previous shimmers. And so I feel like for some of these, or at least the pink and the orange, they kind of gave like an almost metallic sort of look. I'm not really sure how well that makes sense, but I don't know. I just didn't love this like shimmer formula in these. I guess if you understand like my taste and what I expect from like shimmers and what I love in shimmers, you can understand that these just aren't gonna be my favorite. But again, that's not to say that they are like bad polishes by any means. Then as far as the trio goes, I have like mixed feelings on it. The white is easily the standout. Like, I was so impressed with how pigmented and opaque that one was while not being chalky or thick. So easy and smooth to work with. Though I do wonder if maybe after like a couple of months of usage or something, it'll eventually start to get thick, but I feel like everybody should have nail polish thinner in their collection to use. So that's not really a big deal for me. Then with the red and the blue, I'm a little torn on them being this like sort of crelly kind of formula. I feel like with these, they just couldn't decide if they wanted jellies or creams, and so they just went right in the middle. And again, like, you know, they're not bad formula-wise. They have great coverage, beautiful colors, but I feel like if anything, they were a little bit darker, especially with the blue. We have like 3 darker blues in this release, but those are just my thoughts. So again, I would love to know yours down below. As a reminder, these are going to be available for a pre-order discount starting on Friday. I will have ILNP's website linked down below because they should still be on the website right now if you want to look at them and see more swatches. Yeah, make sure to leave me any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!